Whenever you're ready. Excuse me, members over there. Are you here for the meeting or for a chat? You have an option. I prefer to join the meeting. Thank you very much. Welcome everyone to tonight's meeting of the Planning and Development Board. For those of you who are, I should say, first we'll do the evacuation announcement. If you hear the fire alarm, or anything that sounds like an alarm, I'm not expecting any tests tonight, so if the alarm sounds, please leave the building nearest safest exit, which is likely to be that door. If that doesn't work for whatever reason, it will be the front door that you entered the building by. Please don't simply go home because we have a list of everyone that's here. We'll have to provide to the fire brigade. The last thing anybody wants and firemen to risk their lives in the burning building. Apologies for members who are away on official council business or otherwise. I have apologies from Councillor Riley, substituted by Councillor Booth. Are there any other apologies? Thank you. Are you happy that I note Councillor Riley's absence? Yes. Any other comments? Councillor Clues, welcome back to the board.
Yeah.
I hope you.
Not very often, I heard.
Agenda item number 3 is disclosable pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest. Jobs?
So then, item 5C. Yes, please.
Thank you, George. Anything else, members, you wish to mention? Thank you. Now have minutes of the board meeting held on the 22nd of May. Are you content that I sign that as an accurate record? Thank you. All those in favour? Thank you very much. Agenda item number 5 is the planning application. The first planning application is for land north of Stone Cottage, Lower House Lane, Baddesley. We have 2 speakers tonight, first of which Cole. Mr. Cole, if you will take the speaker's chair while Mr. Brown introduces you. Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll run through the slides as already indicated, already included in your papers in front of you. You'll be able to see it and a bit larger. On the top one there is an aerial photograph, and you can see the site in relation to the Birch Coppice industrial estate up here, together with the lane that runs down the Lower House Lane, give access both to the photograph and to Wood End beyond. Railway line you can see there is that curve that you see through the centre of that particular photograph. The bottom photograph shows you the bottom image shows you the proposed layout, and you'll see on there at the bottom there's Stone Cottage. Mr. Cole will refer to that presumably when he speaks later on, and the other property is further to the south beyond the lane. This is the proposed landscaping strategy for the proposed development, as you can see, with the fields involved and substantial planting around the perimeter and through the fields themselves. And then clearly, as the report indicates, there was a refusal back in 2015 for a similar proposal. The difference, which is reported in the introduction to the report, is that this particular field here has been removed from the current proposal. The objector's property is here, and the other listed building is down here. But that particular field has been removed. I'll go back to the. There you see that's the field that has been removed at the bottom. Mr. Chairman, we received a letter of objection, in fact, from Mr. Cole, that came in quite late, came in earlier on this week, or the end of last week. I've circulated that to members, and they should all have had a copy of that by now. It's a letter together with a heritage statement dated November 2015, and no doubt Mr. Cole, as he goes through his particular, when he speaks to you. I think it's important, Mr. Chairman, that the board understands the differences between that case and the current one. They are outlined in section 8 of my report, paragraphs 8.1 to 8.6. Additionally, there have been no objections to this particular proposal from the highway authority and drainage agencies as they're aware. The main issue seems to be around heritage, and that's also referred to in the objective letter and in our report as well. The heritage statement is dated 2015 and not 2003, and therefore it doesn't refer to the updated NPPF. And there's also no balancing exercise being undertaken as required by the NPPF in respect to the public benefits. We agree, as there is part of setting of the listed buildings. It's a question then of balancing that against the public benefits that they bring. In this particular case, because of the introduction of the new local plan, which is supportive of renewal, also because of the change in the NPPF, and also in the change, as you can see in the material considerations section of the report, as the weight given to new infrastructure, electricity storage, and and energy security. The weight of those public benefits now is greater than in 2015. That's the reason, Mr. Chairman, that the recommendation is one of approval.
Thank you, Mr. Cole, please take a turn. Just a second before you start. Members, I've been asked on 2 occasions tonight to remind you, press the green button when you're speaking, partially because members of the public can't hear you if you don't. So we're trying to test the system. So if you don't use it, the test doesn't work. So please don't forget to press the green button. Mr. Cole, welcome to the Council House. Welcome to the meeting. Mr. Tobin will now explain.
First, I'll say you don't have to stand up, so please feel free to sit down if you want to do so. But if you're more comfortable standing up, then that's your choice. In a moment, you'll be given 3 minutes in support. So what I'll do is I'll tell you when your 3 minutes begins, when you've got 1 minute remaining, then at the end of the 3 minutes, I'll let you know if you're still speaking. 3 minutes starts now.
I must confess to a feeling of deja vu. 8 years ago, I stood here objecting to a near identical application for a solar farm, subsequently rejected almost unanimously. The key factor was the failure to acknowledge the setting of the listed building, Stone Cottage, which borders the site. The solar array and 4-metre high security cameras were to be placed literally only yards away from Stone Cottage. This new application again does not address this crucial error. I appreciate the political landscape has changed. Green issues are important, surely not at any cost. I'm not a Luddite in any shape or form. My wife and I have had an electric car for 5 years. As the current owner and curator, I'm duty bound to safeguard this building of historic importance. Do everything in my power to protect it. 8 years ago, I commissioned a respected company to carry out a heritage statement. The conclusions then are entirely relevant now, on the grounds of the desecration of its setting. The application should be rejected. If an amended application, fully respecting the setting of this unique and irreplaceable national asset, were to be submitted, and I would, in theory, support it. Within its current form, this fatally flawed scheme simply has to be rejected. My other concern is that this application is for non-agricultural use. If approved, this will set a precedent for other future development south of the disused railway line. It presently acts as a natural birch coppice business park. If more non-agricultural schemes, such as warehousing, are submitted and subsequently passed, where will it end? That would end? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. Members, do you have any questions for us? Thank you very much indeed. Our next speaker is Mr. Robert Gandy. Mr. Gandy, if you take the speaker's chair. Thank you, Mr. Gandy. Well, welcome to the Council House. Just in case you didn't hear it, Mr. Tobin will explain the rules on public.
Evening, and as I described to the Mr. In a moment, you'll be given 3 minutes to address the board. So I'll let you know when that time starts. I'll let you know when you have a meeting. Then I'll let you know. Time starts.
Good evening, members. The solar farm proposal will generate 5 megawatts of clean, renewable energy, annually providing for the needs of approximately 1,500 households, saving an anticipated 2,100 tonnes of CO2. The government's 2020 Powering Our Net Zero Future paper sets out the objective of the UK achieving net zero carbon emissions by 2050 through setting statutes under the 2019 Climate Change Act. And in July 2019, Warwickshire County Council declared a climate emergency. At COP27, UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak urged world leaders to move further and faster in their transition to renewable energy. The government's 2023 Powering Up Britain Energy Security Plan affirms the commitment to achieve 70 gigawatts of UK solar power energy production by 2035, a five-fold increase on that at present. So such a scheme as proposed is fundamental to reach the target. A modest solar farm will generate electricity from a wholly renewable, responding directly to the threat of climate change and the need to greatly reduce carbon emissions. We welcome the Council's planning department recommending approval for the application, and the applicant has worked collaboratively with the Council, ensuring that sensible scheme has been delivered. All statutory consultees support the application, with conditions applied where necessary, which the applicant is willing to accept. Policy LP35 of the Warwickshire Local Plan encourages the delivery of renewable energy developments. Data will be supported where they respect the capacity and sensitivity of the landscape and communities to accommodate them. Robust technical reports demonstrated the proposed development will have no adverse effects upon the local environment or community, and considered wholly acceptable with regard to all other material planning considerations. An agricultural land classification survey concluded the entire of the site's area grade B land, and therefore not the best and most versatile agricultural. The applicant has carried out extensive geophysical survey investigation with no significant archaeological activity identified. Collaborating with Warwickshire's archaeological officer, a suitable approach has been agreed to mitigate any archaeological impact. The historic environment assessment produced by respected professionals in the field demonstrates the impact on the historic environment and assets are acceptable. Significantly, no objection to the Council's heritage officer. Whilst every application should be judged individually on its own merits, this scheme differs to the previous solar farm at the site due to a much increased provision of landscaping and planting and the introduction of buffers and areas with no development, particularly adjacent to the heritage assets on Lower House Lane. Since then, the need for renewable energy has also been afforded significant weight, with the 2050 net zero commitment now being a legal duty for the UK government. NPPF paragraph 15A states that applications should be approved if impacts are or can be made acceptable, which is clearly the case for this application. We respectfully request that the Council support the Officer recommendation of planning application.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Members, do you have any questions for us?
Thank you, Chairman. You mentioned in your about the agricultural land.
Yeah.
I've noticed in the report that it actually says that the land will not be permanently lost agricultural use.
That's correct, because it's the scheme is temporary and reversible. It's not a permanent scheme, so the land will lay fallow for the period of time, so it will actually potentially help the land. But nowadays as well, there's a lot you can do around solar panels, so there may be grazing of sheep or growing of certain crops underneath the arrays and around the arrays. So there's a lot of new thinking going into utilising the land with a dual usage.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Hayfield?
Well, you may have covered this in presentation, but you crammed a lot in and I was trying to. Sorry, yeah. Why do we need this resource now? And why do we need it in? Well, all these schemes are dependent upon the point of connection and the availability of the grid. So this is an area actually where there is potential for it to taken by the national grid. So what's the why now?
Why there?
Because there's a willing landowner, sorry, and as I say, it's near a central point of connection that can take the solar power that's generated. As regards as why now, as it's set in statutes in 2019 that we have to get rid of pollutants and we have to go to net zero by 2050. So, and as I said there, the government's committed to 70 gigawatts.
Let's just come back on that, Chair, just that. I accept the national setting, yeah, why not? But given that we've got lots of applications for solar farms over the borough, each providing different levels of capacity.
Yeah.
Why do we need the capacity from this site now as opposed to in 5 years' time or 10 years' time?
Because we need to back now on climate change. So the sooner we can start starting it going, the better. So obviously it's a cumulative thing. We need to get towards 70 gigawatts of renewable energy by 2035. So that's not far away. So obviously, as I say, it's an accumulation of schemes like this that are going to be required around the country. And it's a UK target, so it's obviously obviously it's local and it strengthens if there's any brownouts or blackouts in the local region, but it also goes to the UK target 70 gigawatts.
So I don't know who first, so we'll go with Councillor Crosland.
Thank you. We've already heard sort of the heritage buildings, but if there was a more synthetic scheme, there would be more flexibility within your scheme to actually be more synthetic. So
yes, well, as was pointed out with the slide from the field to the left or the west of the heritage asset, that's now been removed from the scheme. So there's no infrastructure there, and it's not particularly clear there that it's going to be grass meadow planting, but immediately the north of heritage grade listed building, there's an area with no development there, and the idea is that's a synthetic buffer, and there's a lot of soft landscaping gone around there that will, as it matures, it shall screen that from views from there, and the setting shouldn't be harmed. But also, which doesn't come across here, the actual topography of the site, it slopes quite heavily away to the south, sorry, to the north on here, so it's sloping down. So as that grows, as you're looking out, you wouldn't potentially see the lower portion of the site anyway.
Councillor Paulson.
Thank you, Chair. I don't think many of us need reminding about the background to all this because we see it on the news every day now. But I wonder if you could tell us 70 gigawatts as a target. Do you know any information on where we are nationally?
Yeah, I think it's obviously a movable target, but we need obviously 2035 is only what years away, and we need it's a five-fold increase on what we have at present that we need to get up to that. So there's going to have to be quite a revolutionary sea change in the provision of renewable energy sites like this.
Thank you. Councillor.
8.14 visual amenity, you say that you're going to be planting more trees and hedgerows. Would these be native trees?
They would be, yeah.
And also, if just like 3 parts of them didn't turn out, would they be replaced so that there's no gaps?
I think what usually happens is, and probably is a condition to it, that should any of the planting die within 5 years of them being planted, then you have to reuse it and replant them. So it is, that will be conditioned.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Humphries?
I was going to say, I'm looking at the drawing and I can't actually see it here. Is there a building associated with this that vertebrate? Where will it be on the site?
There is.
No, I'm looking at the latest.
Oh, is that the latest one?
Yeah. I can't see
There
it.
is. That's the landscaping plan. But in the centre of the scheme, there's a little red rectangle which will.
I should get the glasses with me. Okay, thank you very much. And how big is that?
Entirely sure. The client was going to be here to deal with the technical spec.
Like full cabin, nothing.
I think it may be the size of, guessing, of a shipping container.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, sorry for the, thank you, Chairman. Just going on from Councillor Hakefield's comment, we talked about here, and note that in the government, that other people try to encourage solar panels, etc., to go on roofs of buildings. So again, why there? Could this not be somewhere else on other buildings around the region?
I think that was explored, and I think that again, it would be more the client who would go into, obviously they've had to approach landowners and things like that. But I think that there wasn't the will from people to have the solar panels on to this amount of provision of energy. It's 5 megawatts, so I think that it's quite concentrated in that triangular area. Even if you were saying that the whole of that industrial area to the north, I don't think you would get that same amount of generated. A lot of these potentially may not be amenable to you using the site, but the same reason to go to the grid. They may use it for their own utilization, but it's.
Thank you, Chair.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. Thank you. Mr. Brown, sorry, if you're just going to make one question, you may assist before. And that is the reference was made to the planning policy framework. And it's crucial to negotiations of this type to have it states that the local planning authorities should not require applicants to demonstrate the overall need of energy. Recognise that even small scale overall contribution is cutting greenhouse gas emissions. So the national picture isn't so important. It's about the planouts of this application in that location, which is the focus compared to whether nationally we're meeting targets or whether we have a need for it or not. So it's that part is another part of the test that you have to. Thank you. Councillor Clues, I just checked the conditions. It's condition 18, which requires any plants to be.
Thank you.
And while doing conditions, Mr. Brown, 21 talks about a decommissioning plan within 6 months of cessation. Absolutely not.
That's the standard condition, Mr. Chair, which we've used on the past 3 for solar farms in the borough. It's consistent with what the board agreed.
Answer, but not necessarily to the question.
Well, I can only advise you, Mr. Chairman, on what the board already agreed to. This condition follows the existing conditions that we have accepted, and the applicants have accepted those as well.
Members, Councillor Andrew Wright sends his apologies. He can't be with us this evening, but he has asked that in place I ask you to consider deferral of this application for site visit. Who would like to start? Councillor Fowler?
Thank you, Chair. So I certainly welcome the opportunity to have a site visit, see the papers, etc. But I've not had the opportunity, like other members, being a new member, I've not had the opportunity. So I would welcome that opportunity to see it for myself. So welcome that deferral, Chairman.
Thanks.
Happy to support.
Councillor Desert?
Firstly, I would like to second. So I think it is essential that we actually get a feel for essential that feel site. Looking at the plans that are in front of us here, I note that the buffer between footage and this development 3 metre edge. No trees, no indication of how high it's going to be. I wish reimagine that isn't going to hide. Depends on the or and how steep it is. And I can't remember how steep it is from last application. When we did this last time, there were grave concerns. The development that area spreading the railway line, which actually makes a natural barrier to urban sprawl, really. And I think that that is still very, very important and hasn't been great. I'm very concerned we are allowing this spread. Coming up with planning reasons to stop it is more difficult. I'm certainly not. And
So members, the convention we did a site visitors and seconded, and I'm taking Councillor Fowler as proposing it and seconding. Vote on deferral for probably debate until the next. See all those in favour of deferral. So subject will be deferred. Mr. Brown will be in touch with you. Site visit and we back to conversation. We now move on to application number 569 and 570 for 95 Hog Street, Abington. Brandon Carter, you've indicated that you think so. If you could take the speaker. Mr. Brown, introduce. Mr. Brown.
Again, I'll just run through the slides, which are replicas of the paper pages in the agenda. The site, which members realise in central town, in Long Street, with the 40 tons house, which is here, Market Street, which is referred to in the report, directly opposite, leading up to the Market Square. This is the appearance of the building as now, and as you can see from the report, Chairman, there is no objection to the colours or to the signage, the fascia sign, or the illumination on that particular frontage. The issue that we have, Mr. Chairman, are the screens, which are on the top slide here, and also replicated in the longer view here. As you can see from the report, Mr. Chairman, I said there's no objection from a personal point of view, or indeed from a listed building, the majority of this particular application. It's the screens that are the problem, and that is described in the report. The issue here is not the fact that necessarily there are screens, but they are illuminated, and that they change their display every 10 or 15 seconds. So then, from that, they are turning. And as you can see from the report, Mr. Chairman, we've had objections from a nearby resident, also from the Highway Authority, because of their location at the end of this particular junction with traffic coming down Market Street, and they'll be looking at those particular signs. That's unusual objection from the Highway. But as you can see, It's a split recommendation. We're recommending approval for the advertisement regulations, majority of development, but also a refusal to display signs. As a consequence of that, if members run with that, consider the expediency of enforcement action, which in this case is the building enforcement notice that is set out in recommendation B.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Mr. Councillor, welcome back to the Council House. Just for the change, everyone
Me saying in relation to the other speakers, in a moment you'll be given 3 minutes in which to address the board. So I'll let you know when that time commences. I'll let you know when any time starts now.
Thank you for having me. So we started this process in November upon opening Carter's estate agents in Addiston. Completed substantial remodelling on the entire property upon guidance of Aragon Properties, our landlord and the managing agent. We felt that we stuck to guidelines as closely as we possibly could, as Jeff's already explained, that it's the screens that are the major sticking point. We liaised with several companies about these screens, and we're not aware of any legislation that would prevent them from being installed. And throughout the whole process, it's been an extremely frustrating process dealing with Planning Officer Christina Fortune, in which I was provided with conflicting advice throughout the whole application. It also was then I was liaising with Jenny Ledbetter about her heritage concerns as well. We feel that we've been more than accommodating and offered a variety of solutions and adaptations to hopefully satisfy all parties. And prior to coming here tonight, I thought we made some progress. Essentially, we appreciate that the screens haven't been seen in Addiston before, but they are by no means new technology. They are 49-inch LG televisions that the vast majority of us have in our homes. So to disagree and to raise concerns on the brightness on a high street when you have that level of brightness in your front living room is difficult to accept. We've arranged for several different adaptations that I'll cover at the end. But as a modern business and in an extremely competitive industry, we wanted to set up ourselves apart from our competitors and thought that was a significant way to do so. The screens that you're seeing up on the screen up there, similar to what I have at Long Street, is essentially installed up and down the country in heritage buildings, listed buildings and conservation areas, including Stratford, significant parts of historical London, Leamington and Bath, York, you name it, they're there.
You have 1 minute.
No problem. Since setting and establishing ourselves in the area, we make it a priority to work within the community, and those screens have been a big part of that. And from liaising with Andrew, following my dealings with Christina, he's been nothing but proactive and diligent, along with Sam, the environmental health. As far as I was aware, Sam resolved the complaint that came from the constituent that was left unresolved for approximately 5 months because no action was taken despite my chasing and recommendations. And obviously the compromises that I agreed to with Andrew was that I would happily move them 1 metre back. I would reduce the brightness again. I would refrain from using any kind of videos. I would synchronise the screens together so they show the same thing, but only change once every 10 seconds. That, as far as I was aware, would satisfy the highways concerns as well. So thank you very much for your time. I'm done now, but yeah, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Councillor. Do you have any questions? Councillor Jarvis and Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Chair. Being a local that uses that area every single day, I want to commend the actual looks of the building. It has been done in a very tasteful way. It's using heritage colours. My concern is the screens. Having driven that many times, as you come down Market Street, you have got two 49-inch televisions directly in. It's not so apparent during the daytime, but at night time, they are very obtrusive and they do take the eye. As you would in home, you can turn down the brightness of televisions to make them in a much more subtle way. But certainly in the way that they are presented at the moment, they are very, very obtrusive. And I think they are a danger to motorists in so much as screens. And also you do show videos on there as well. Not all static photos, they are videos on there as well. So going along what Mr. Brown says, got no problem with the advertising consent and all that. My problem is I do believe, as I say, being a local, that a lot of people have got and concern, particularly motorists, and it is at night down Market Street. They are straight in front of you, and they are very, very eye-catching. And
Is there a question to ask?
well, what can you do about it? You turn them down into a manner where they are not so obtrusive, where they're very subtle, or do something to remove that glare as you drive down Market Street. Because I couldn't vote for approval because I do believe genuinely dangerous. The advertising consent, great, you've done a brilliant job. It's the heritage building back, it's heritage colours, it looks great. Just the televisions, they need sorting.
So essentially, conversations with Andrew, they'll be reduced to, I think it's 600 lumens, which was recommended by the highways, which will reduce the glare. The timers are already set between nighttime hours, so now I think it's between 10 and 7. So if you're driving down there at night in darkness, they aren't on. And that will change obviously as the seasons getting dark at 6, 7 o'clock in the winter, and we turned off at nighttime hours. We're also going to be, again, this has been part of the process. We wanted to implement these changes, but have been told not to until a decision has been made. We're ready to remove any kind of videos and have completely static images on screens. And they're also going to synchronise as well, where they will show the same thing at the same time, but an extended period of time, so there won't be any flashing. The idea of that is that if somebody is pulling up on the one-way system, they're there for 10, 15 seconds, it will be one screen that they will see, and then they'll be able to move on. So we hope that we've addressed all of those in our conversations with Andrew, that they can work and they can be in keeping. But thanks for your comments on the finish of the building. We're really, really chuffed.
Councillor Bell?
So the compromise that you suggested seems. So just so I'm clear, highways had an objection. Was that what you were proposing before? What's highways' response that you're intending to put in place?
So I'm unaware if they've officially been put to them. I had a meeting with a few councillors a while back to discuss resolutions. I've been liaising with Andrew as well, Collinson, about my recommendations. As far as I was aware, that they were satisfactory. I've only now just seen that they're proposing to reject the application despite my amendments.
So that's what I wanted to ask. So they've rejected it even though you've put recommendations?
Well, I haven't had it. I'm unsure if there's been any official word. The environmental health one was raised on the basis of a constituent that lived in a flat across the road about light pollution and being on during darkness hours. And so as far as I was aware, that was satisfied. And the highways, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know if you can comment, but there was on the brightness and the location of the videos, and so we changed those.
Let's have all the questions first. Councillor Close?
Thank you, Chair. As you know, I'm local, and I've got to commend him on. I wished all our tenants that took on buildings would do it to the spec that it is. I mean, there's this problem, I believe, at night. I don't drive now, so I've not witnessed it. But when you said that it'll be stopping the videos, I think stopping the videos through the day would be a shame, because I know you have been working with the local community.
Yeah.
And the other question I was just going to say to Mr. Brown, had he had any update from Highways? Thank you, Chair.
Okay, members, do you have any more questions for our speaker? In which case, thank you very much. Mr. Brown, you wanted to?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to clarify. This is the bottom of page 5B, 14. Office above that, there are the alterations which Mr. Carter was talking about, the 5 particular issues there which are outlined. And then I'll read it out. Officers have informally taken advice on these potential measures. Highway officers and the environment that would not object to them into a revised submission. However, advice from the heritage officer indicates that there will be no support for they still have a demonstrable adverse impact on the character of the listed building and conservation area. So the issue, Mr. Chairman, is a heritage issue. It's not an environmental health issue or a highway issue, if those particular adaptations were taking place.
Thank you. Councillor Hayfield.
I walked past the site even today. I will. But I think the whole shop needs a terrific improvement. Also, listening to the applicant, he has clearly been prepared to try and meet the needs and address the issues being raised. And frankly, for me, it was always going to be a highways. If the highways had maintained an objection, I think I would have taken that. But I don't see the listed building bit on this at all. I'll move that consent is granted.
Councillor Bell.
I agree with Councillor Hayfield. I walked past there today. I don't think there's a heritage issue. I mean, heritage officer, but looking at it, you know, and particularly with the compromise that's been, I would be happy to say that.
Yeah. That is from what was there previously. My understanding is that the screens in there doesn't significantly change status of the building, and something that can be removed, not a permanent alteration to the actual heritage building. So
You indicated to speak.
I was. It was about planning conditions on 5B52 to say that 11, well, that 10 is the illumination of the signs is not between 10 PM and 8 AM, and that the consent for it doesn't include the consent for the 2 screens. I understand this is part of the split conditions that we were discussing previously, but I wondered whether something about the signage and the timing could actually be applied to the large screens instead.
Good point, Councillor Gossing. I was going. Members were minded to delegate conditions to conditions here are aimed at refusal consenting on. As you have list ready, Mr.
No, Mr. Chairman, I have not. If the recommendation still stands, if the board decides to grant it, a separate notice will have to be prepared, and I'm happy to share those conditions with members and whoever you nominate, Mr. Chairman. I strongly recommend that, however, that in terms of any resolution, that the 5 matters raised on 5B49, which are the adaptations that Mr. Carter is referring to about, are actually referred to in the minute and will be reflected in the conditions. So it's absolutely clear what changes there are to the proposal that have led to a change in the recommendation, a change outside of the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor David.
Thank you. I'm still not comfortable with this. Even with the challenges, it is a very promising site, as you town. I disagree with councillors that it doesn't make that much difference when you come down Market Street. It is very, very noticeable. I think that these 5 propositions for changes are absolutely vital, particularly the distance away from the window. As it stands at the moment, I couldn't support.
Thank you, Chair. My support is absolute total for the way that the shop has been presented. I can't see the heritage impact because it is like any other. I would be prepared to support it, provided that the screens were dimmed and done the necessary things that's been said to make them more supple, as opposed to being in the face of drivers. And with the respect of people saying they've seen it, totally agree with them, but the view at night, absolutely, totally different view at day. They are not in your face at night because they're just like two lights. Sorry, in the daytime, they are not in your face. At night time, they are brighter than vehicles. And if you're not careful, somebody will see them, pull out, and you're going to have a side impact there. So I'd be happy to support, but conditions that the screens are made more supple, move back a bit, whatever's needed, make them so that they're not so obtrusive. As I say, if people want to view it, please view it at night when it's dark, not during daylight hours, because it is a different kettle of fish at night. Thank you.
Anyone else? Councillor Fowler, and then.
Thank you, Chair. Following on what Councillor Jarvis has just said, yes, the distance certainly welcome. You mentioned about giving them, sorry, and you certainly mentioned about pinning them down, and you're sorting it out between the different times and the seasons as well. You mentioned about videos, no videos. I think for you, Chair, be able to play those videos during the daytime, so affecting at night. Yeah, I think I heard that there was no videos.
The time for asking questions to us.
That's why I said for you, Chief.
Sorry. I can't myself ask this. Councillor Parsons.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I know that our speaker did say that they would make seasonal adjustments. There's nothing here about seasonal adjustments. I think we should actually, I'd be happy to support this given the conditions that I think we should add a condition to say that essentially that the screen should be available during the daylight hours.
Thank you. Councillor Hay?
My proposal was predicated on the fact that you could actually do. How you word that, either in the minutes or in a condition.
Thank you, Councillor. Members, I'm still a little bit in the dark as to where you really want to go on this. I think there are 2 or 3 options. I've heard people speak pretty much in favour with conditions, and not in favour. So as I see it, the alternative recommendation should be either consent, subject to conditions to be agreed by our officers, referral for to come back to you. I'm in your hands.
My proposal was the first one.
Consent, subject to be agreed, and specifically referencing the 5 points on page 5B.
Yes.
49. Is that seconded? Seconded? Are there any other proposals? In which case, that being the only one we have, we'll take a vote on that. Those in favour of granting consent conditions to be agreed by the officers, but specifically including 5B. Those in favour? And those against? Those abstaining? So that's approved. Thank you very much. So that item is granted consent with conditions. Now move to application number 620, the public conveniences Station Street, Atherstone. Mr. Brown, anything to add to your report?
No, Mr. Chairman, I've just slides again so that people can see them. The site is here in the centre of Atherstone, the bus station. As you can see, it's just south of the bus station. And then again, a larger slide of the actual proposals following, if approval is granted, following the changes.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Well, I'm just not sure why hot food takeaway is sui generis.
Councillor Bell is referring to the new use classes order. It's in the use classes order, Mr. Chairman, so I've got no choice about it.
Okay. Members, any comments? Councillor Hay, with the recommendation, Chairman.
Second, Chair.
Councillor Cummings.
I'd like to make a comment. There are opening hours
perhaps this recommendation, which are referring to the opening hours business. Doesn't appear to be anything about the opening hours of to make sure available 20 hours a day, or whether they are disabled. That's going to be of inaccessible unless the attached business is open. It's essential that these are kept available hours. Whether there is something that we can do in the planning regulations to ensure that that happens.
Mr. Pratt?
I can take that up, Mr. Chairman. I can see where Councillor Dervix is coming from, because condition 3 just talks about business operations. I'll take that up with our property officers, Mr. Chairman. There may be a security issue, there may be another issue involved, but I can certainly take that through and keep Councillor Dervix and yourself advised.
Thank you. Councillor Bell, then Councillor Humphries. Oh, hang on. I've got to keep moving my head out.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what Councillor Dervix has said. I understand he would like the to be over 24 hours, but actually I think it's not reasonable. Considering some of the damage that was taking place with the toilets before when there were hours and they were open, I do think that if it was my business, I'd be very reluctant to have the toilets open when there was no supervision, because they're the responsible. So, you know, I think this is brilliant that this has happened. We're going to have a facility that we haven't got now, both in terms of food available for people going on buses, etc., and toilets available for some of the time, which we haven't got at the moment. So I'm quite happy with it.
Make a comment in reply to that one. What I'm referring to is that many disabled toilets around the country have a radar key, which is just an ordinary key that you get. But there are newer ones being introduced that actually have a lock that doesn't work. Time. I think that we should make sure that it's available. If the topic, that will.
But I have to say, disabled toilet radar key, and they can be accessed by.
Apparently, there is a new sort that doesn't work. Appearing in businesses. Toilets that are attached to businesses.
And we will certainly check on. Chair, I was looking at the time. I listened to what Councillor Bell said, and actually, I believe said what was found there when we went into the repairs and that, and what it was being used for when it wasn't any monitoring was outrageous. And I think the hours of opening with no business operation. Not sure what the hours is. No between 0600 and other than between 0600 and 2300. But yeah, for long periods of time, while the bus services were operating, I believe that's happening. I think that's adequate. That I would prefer the toilets were monitored and maintained. I'm happy with that part of the proposal. Thank you, Councillor Goldman.
Thank you. Firstly, I'd like to say a credit to the people who've managed to raise their concerns about the loss of the original asset, the fact that this has brought about quite an imaginative and creative solution, and to credit those people that have actually put the time into finding a way forward that wasn't just losing the asset completely. Obviously, one of the toilets is public and disabled, and I think if there is an opportunity to maintain radar key access, be well worth doing. But I do hear what you're saying about the antisocial behaviour and public conveniences. I don't think there's any suggestion that the public access is maintained on the private property without that, but I do think that if there's an opportunity to maintain the radar access, that would be a solution.
Councillor Parson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I would absolutely support what has been said. Said there. I think also is equal rethinking this issue. So actually, bowel and bladder issues represent a real disability. I know because I live with somebody who has that disability, and it's a very real concern. I do accept, I do not like social behaviour around like that, but I think that we should be urging these toilets are made accessible to anyone. Do those with recognised disability. It is a recognised disability, and that it should be accessible. While, if we're going to be talking about disabled access, talking about disabled access, not those disabilities we happen to think. Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Close.
Thank you, Chair. I think this has been a brilliant idea. I don't think anybody had more stick than these two of us over the toilets shutting. And I'm glad that the council and the officers and I've worked with them. I've got a radar key. I've also got a priority card. But you can get a radar key anywhere. You don't have to be disabled to get a radar key. And it would be a good idea. Yes. Now I catched the bus today to go up to the hospital. Well, and it's a new chappie that was driving the bus. He says, "Where's the toilet?" I said, "Pass on that one for at least a little while I'm open." Luckily, the taxi rank let him use it. So it isn't just the people that's here, it's visitors, it's the buses, it's everywhere, people coming off the train. So I think it's been a really good initiative idea, but I do get the disability. Yeah.
Anyone else? I think we had a proposal. Some members, again, I'm in a little bit of a question. You're asking, I think, quite reasonable questions, but the report on the recommendation is silent. So you have the opportunity. The application give consent, but for the application, the conditions to be clarified, to that either back to you or dealt with by officers. Thank you.
I think my proposal was move the recommendation. If you feel it's advisable to add a condition to that or a codicil to that, explore some of the issues, then I'm content with that.
Thank you. Members, I would be grateful if you do remind conditions to be in my head. I'm not entirely clear what condition for. I know the intent. I prefer for that to be clarified. Councillor Dillon.
I was just going to second that, sort of explore one of those issues before acting or accepting. This is not ours. What conditions should be?
Okay, Mr. Togan,
within the 40 hours of the duty.
Any other comments? In this case, it's been proposed and seconded that the principle of planning consent be granted. Planning consent be granted, but that officers liaison with Phillips and determine local members on. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. We now move on to application number 5B, 547 and 48 for the Coach Hotel High Street Council. Mr. Brown, anything to add to your report?
Just go through the slides, Mr. Chairman. The site, as you can see, is in the centre of Coleshill, just beyond to the south of the main town centre. You can see it outlined in red there. The structure, where the structure is in relation to the hotel road. And then these are replicated in your papers. You can see a photograph of what actually exists at the present time and accompany that. And then this is the accommodation block which is approved here, which is referred to the report, just to remind members that is still extant and still be built out. That's what the appearance would be. And finally, a set of photographs taken from 2017 way back to 2011, so that you can see there is the top left, where you can see there is a structure there already. And that's the reference, Mr. Chairman, in the committee report to it being lawful under planning legislation. It's not lawful under listed building legislation because there's no time immunity for listed building applications. And that is worded, and that is reflected in the recommendation in front of you, Mr. Chairman. Potential temporary consent building legislation with a view to negotiate a far more sympathetic shelter future.
I'll move the recommendation, Chair.
Doing the recommendations for 12 months, is that in the recommendation at the moment?
Is that your proposal? That seems reasonable to me.
Just Chair, I just think that's too long. I think this structure's been in place for a while. They need to get a move on with it. And I'll propose that they get 6 months. Should be ample time to get on with the work that this was designed to be a temporary fixture for.
Councillor Close?
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to second that. Temporary is temporary, not years and in the future. So I'd like to second that we give 6 months instead of. Okay.
Before we go any further, can I, if you don't mind, with your, I'd just like to ask a couple of questions. I am slightly confused because from what I understood today, planning consent should be granted. Listed building consent is different. Yet the recommendation seems to give a temporary consent to planning consent. What does that mean?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. What I'm saying is the planning point of view structure is not on immunity issue with the 4-year rule. So therefore I'm saying that in that respect, that's a material consideration which you should give weight to, therefore a planning commission should be granted. The listed building, there is no time immunity issue. Does not become lawful, which is why in this particular case, that particular matter is taken up separately.
Okay, I was just getting confused in my mind between something which is lawful because it's been there long enough and is giving a temporary consent to it. So I understand where you're going, I think. My principal concern, I have significant sympathy with Councillor Hayfield. Perhaps I don't have material. But I think if we were to look at people with listed buildings space, with the best in the world, and I can't say that this development, however long it's been there, enhances the list of buildings as anything for the conservation area. We are to not consent, or accept consent is something we can't deal with, but a list of buildings. Everything that I understand says if you grant consent, there is no such thing as a temporary permission, there's permanent permission for a period. And if you then go back to that at the end of a year or 6 months, and there is a subsequent application for fuel, unless there's been a material change in the circumstance, by your own petard, cannot refuse it. How do we address that?
Mr. Chairman, the recommendation indicates that we shall indicate to the applicant there's no movement time period. 12 months is recommended. Then, when it comes, if it does come in for, if it doesn't come in for, possible listed building enforcement notice.
And you are content you have sufficient ammunition to?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Can I just say I'm absolutely happy to accept recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Fowler?
Thank you. Maybe one comment on the report here. It says it provides outdoor seating as well as being a smoking area. I have to say, as a non-smoker, I don't think I would be too happy being there and being smoked out by people. Maybe there's a distance between it, and I know that my next comment is going to be on the licensing. I'm horrified every time that I go past there is that you've got drinkers and smokers outside of the property, actually on the footpath on the high street. And I shall, if this goes ahead, I shall certainly be asking licensing to monitor this. That's what you've got, is a smoking area at the rear. Make sure that's what you do. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? We've had a recommendation for temporary consent for 6 months, which we proposed and seconded. Can I see? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Members, we now move to application 5E, which is application number 5825 Wood Street, Wood End, Penworth. Mr. Richards has indicated that to speak. Mr. Richards, if you take the speaker's chair while Mr. Brown interviews. I would also say, members, that a site visit happened on Saturday and a report of that is on your Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The slides, the site outlined in red, as you can see there, a bungalow on the west side of as you can see, and then a photograph showing the extension of the rear, which members saw on their site visit. And in terms of block plan, that's what we have. I'll go back to the photograph, Mr. Chairman. A note of the site visit is there. Members that visited the site will see, from those members that didn't visit the site, you'll see that we visited 25, went to the rear and had a look around. And then we also went to the objector's property, who lives next door, and viewed the extension from there together with their existing conservatory. And you can see a note of that meeting there, Mr. Chairman. Just to bring members up to date, there were comments at the site meeting about building inspectors' visits. A building inspector has visited the site. But had confirmation today that we understand the building inspector will be visiting the site tomorrow.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Which back to the council house. Mr. Tobin will now go through the.
I have heard them.
You're happy?
Yes, I am happy to go ahead. Mr. Chairman, I sent to your council document drafted by myself, dictated by myself, prepared elsewhere, which I then personally delivered to the council. Have all the people in this room read that document? Have they been given the opportunity to see that document? Seem to be the answers to that. Do they answer now or not? No, okay. Okay. I will say to you all who didn't visit Saturday, do you know the dimensions of this conservatory? I don't think anybody does. Has anybody seen the aerial photography that approved by? I don't know whether they have. You may know more than what I do, Mr. Chairman. I don't know. But I did get the distinct impression when you visited my property party on Saturday, you seemed very bored, didn't want to hear what I was having to say to you. Whether that's right or not, I don't know. But I go through all my documents that I've been dealing with, writing, working all this out. What I'm trying to do is get these people to adhere to your own building regulations. They have now ignored since approximately 8 months. But they've still carried on building. Even after a site visit by 2 of your council employees visited the site, and then wrote a letter to the next door, number 5, saying that they must get full planning permission before they carry on building. But if you do carry on building, you may have to suffer the consequences. I'd like to know, what are the consequences? I haven't got a clue, but all I do know, this is very objectionable to me, who's lived there in that property, my property, for over 60 years. We're faced with these, I will say, outlandish builders that have built this. They've given no consideration to us as neighbours. I think it's dreadfully wrong, this council, if they allow this to remain in its present form. I don't really have much more to say to you. I have a lot, but I know I haven't got the time. If anybody wants to see the local paper, it's all published in.
Thank you.
You're welcome to see. Okay, okay.
Members, do you have any questions for Mr. Mr. Richards, you said how you feel. You can apologise if I gave you that intent.
Certainly did.
Members, who would like to speak on behalf? Mr. Phillips.
Yes, thank you, Chair. As at the last meeting, Chair, I will be abstaining on this. I don't believe that I can be seen to be determined both on either side, but I have got, I'm concerned about this. I'm concerned. The reason I brought it to the board was because of the retrospectiveness. Because we often talk about the retrospective views of these. This does mean that anybody's objection is retrospective, therefore has got a little chance of actually changing anything that has been put forward, because it's already there. And that was, I say, my main objection about bringing this forward, and also about as I said before, about the building regulations. I haven't really got a lot more to say about it, but as I say, just to keep on harping on about the retrospectiveness and this, people seem to be able to sort of put up stuff, and again, as Mr. Richardson says, there does, whatever the rights and wrongs of it are, there seems to be no comeback on anyone who wants to just have a punt and put up something, and we'll see how we get on. And that I find really frustrating, and I won't believe all that continues, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Bell.
Thank you. I understand and share Councillor Phillips' view on retrospective applications. However, we know that we cannot take that into account. The fact that it's retrospective does not have any impact on the decision on this, and neither does anything on building control, and I know Councillor Phillips knows that. And it's also frustrating. I was on the site visit, and I do understand why there was some concern from the neighbour. However, I could not see any planning reason why we don't agree. I will move the.
Any other member wishes?
Thank you. I think just to share what's already been said, I have some concern that if we pass the planning permission tonight and there is a building regulations issue, it has to be taken down. I also have some concern that this is the second extension, so it's already been extended once and then extended another time. And I just wonder how much you can keep going with, whether they can now build a conservatory on the back of this property and things like that. So there's some concern about the kind of whether there's a limit to how much they can keep extending it, especially with coming from retroactive planning permission. But as already stated, I don't think it's within our remit and with our control, sadly, to affect those things.
Mr. Brown, anything to add to that?
No, Mr. Chairman, if an application comes in, that will be dealt with on its own planning merits at that time. Just as this one is, that the fact that buildings are extended is not necessarily a reason for refusal. I have to look at the impact of the new proposal as it comes forward.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. I think one of the things we've got to remind is the distinct difference between planning approval and building control. That it can have planning, but it can still fail on building control. I believe I'm right on that, Alan? Yeah. So even though it has been built, if it hasn't been built to the appropriate standards, there are still actions that may, could, might be taken.
Councillor Parsons.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate I'm in danger of exposing my ignorance here, but I wonder if Mr. Brown could help us, help me anyway. What is the standard plan?
They are the plan numbers of the application plans that were actually submitted. That's a standard conditions used on all applications, and a real numbers are actually being that we can actually decide about which plans are being approved and those.
So it's the designation.
Any other comments? Members, in view of our speaker, I think there is effectively a suggestion that and given that I will not on it. But nevertheless, we had a proposal that can be granted. Seconded. Are there any other recommendations? Second. Any other recommendations? In which case, can I see those in favour of granting? Those against? Those abstaining? Thanks very much. So consented granted. We now move on to application number 117 for 89 to 91 Main Road. Which is on Teams. So if we could make sure that we can first with Mr. Neil on Teams, that would be good. If you could stand by, Mr. Neil, while Mr. Brown introduces him.
Right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll just run through the couple of slides that we have here, because members have seen these already from previous applications. The red line on there shows the application site at the present time, with the pool at the top, and the access that goes to the rear of the properties in Main Road, and then coming out onto Flats Lane and onto Main Road at the bottom of that. And then the next one shows you the outbuilding for which planning permission was granted for its conversion. See that in the solid L-shaped building in the top left here of the plan on that one. I'll just move back to the application plan. As you're aware, Mr. Chairman, this has been before. This case has been with you before, and there's also been an appeal decision as a that particular result. The report goes into some length as to current updated position on respect of consultation responses. Also outlines the differences between this and the appeal refusal. I must also point out, Mr. Chairman, that that correspondence is attached as appendices to your report, and members will have seen that as they've gone through the papers. The report itself, Mr. Chairman, highlights the main issues that the inspector at the last consideration drew to the attention due to his attention when he was I've given I've explained that in some detail, particular issues that he and those, as you can see from the report, are living conditions, residents who front Main Road and who's back onto the track, pedestrian safety, particularly the access on Flats Lane, and also the use of that track, vehicles, and the fact that it's hosts a public footpath. Heritage matters also raised, and then also I explained in some detail, as the inspector also went into, the benefits of the see that outlined in the report, and that there's nothing new in this point. This has been outlined before. Members looked at it the previous time. They had the letters of support, customers, visitors who'd actually used the facility, so aware of the strength of feeling that particular use. And at the end, Mr. Chairman, on 5F90 stated to you facilities that are elsewhere in the borough and outside the borough. I've also copied in section 149 of the Qualities Act, so that because that's referred to by the applicants and circle members and have the opportunity to read that. There is a finer planning balance here than there was the previous time round. That's because of the traffic generated by the proposal is less the inspector looked at, and I made that quite clear in the report. I do say in the report that there's this particular planning balance this time that the inspector looked at it, and that means that members will give different weights that the inspector looked at last time round. It's my view, Mr. Chairman, as you can see from the report, there is still harm caused, and I've outlined the reasons for that. That is basically because of change in character, lane or the track that goes to the back of these proposals, the impact on residents there, and that's the issue that I'm raising in the recommended refusal reason, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Mr. Neal, welcome to the meeting.
Hello there.
As you'll be aware, Mr. Tobin will explain the rules.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. Probably seen it with the other speakers, but just to make sure you're aware, at the moment you're given 3 minutes each to address the planning board. So I'll let you know when your 3 minutes commences, when you have 1 minute remaining, and then at the end of that 3 minute period.
Yeah, I do have some notes from Mr. Chadwick as well, but I don't know if I'll have time to read those out. So we'll see how we go.
3 minutes starts.
Ready when you are, Mr. Neal.
Okay, good afternoon or good evening now. This application does not differ from the ones previously submitted and rejected by both the North Warwickshire Council and the Government Inspector, nor does it have a nil detriment effect on the neighbours or the safety of Flats Lane. It has been accepted as a resubmission as the applicant has altered the proposed number of vehicles using the pool slightly. This is not policeable, nor does it take into account the vehicles using the approved bungalow or the many business meetings and entertaining run by the applicant from Charity House. Therefore, any numbers given on vehicle movements should be disregarded. The pool was built over 30 years ago on the specific permission to be used by residents only. It is not built to any current or commercial standards. Nor does it have any level access, designated suitable disabled parking or any facilities at all for disabled people. Indeed, the whole garden is outside the Ostrey development boundary. And as before, the public footpath that is proposed is not safe, it has no passing places, nor does not meet the required standards. And it is in the inspector's report that it would increase the risk of a collision on the main road and prejudice the safety of pedestrians using the footpath and cause harm to the safety of both. As a family, we are now not able to use our garden or the amenities due to this noise and disruption. Again, the Government Inspector is surprised that there's been no survey by the applicant to alleviate this, nor can he see a way how it could be addressed. He quotes that any private lessons would not accord with Part 9 of the policy of LP29 Local Plan 2021, and it would not avoid unacceptable harm to the neighbouring amenities for reason of noise. Both my daughters have had the quiet enjoyment and ability to study affected by this traffic. It's been noted many times that there is a safer entrance off Main Road, yet the applicant does not want to use this as it will affect their quiet enjoyment, but they are quite happy to affect their neighbours' quiet enjoyment whilst making money from this commercial business. Again, the Government Inspector is quite clear in that any facility that meets 149 public sector requirements, which have all been given, does not trump the safe and quiet enjoyment and amenities of the neighbouring properties. And if this was a new application for building a commercial swimming pool or 6 new houses, it would again be rejected and should be now.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you.
There are no questions, Mr. Neal, so thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Members, any comments or questions?
Yeah, I was going to say, I've read the report. I've looked at the report. I think Mr. Neal said everything that needs to be said, and I propose follow the recommendation of the officer.
Thank you, Councillor Humphries. So seconder. Thank you. if you don't mind, members, before we go on, Mr. Brown, I'd just like to go a little bit further into one of your comments. I genuinely, I have read all the correspondence. I understand the different nature of this application compared to previous ones. Equally understand what Peter was saying in terms of the difficulty of measuring and assessing. In the second section in your report on conclusions, comment that on balance there would be safe and suitable access for all users. Just like to understand how you particularly given that LP 29 says we should avoid an acceptable impact residential amenity. Those two sit together because I genuinely am concerned that how could we begin to enforce a condition relating to usage?
In terms of condition relating to usage, then the condition would have to be precise. It would have to outline the maximum of this particular that the board set. That would be done by register. Or would there be a second condition on that attached that a register would have to be provided to the applicant to show that visitors are coming to this particular when they leave, so that we can actually evaluate the actual number of being used. There is a monitoring, so the monitoring would take effect of that. What I'm saying here is that because the Highway Authority has not got an objection, it didn't have an objection last time, it hasn't got an objection this time. Therefore, I think a reason for a few highway grounds in terms of its weight that would be given to in a planning appeal situation.
I understand that, and I get no highway objection. Sure how that goes into safe and suitable access for all. That's where I have a issue generally. I have to leave it. I have to say personally, my assessment of the weight in the balance is slightly different to yours. I still think there is, I go more to the damage and perhaps you are. Any other comments, man? Proposed and seconded that plan permission be refused. And that's unanimous. Thank you very much. So planning consent is. Now move to application for 350 for 120 people. Chris Robinson has indicated his application. So Mr. Robinson, if you could take the chair and introduce his report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Slides, those which you've seen before. The access, the site there is outlined in red. The doctor's surgery is here at the bottom of the immediate area, immediately here on the right. The members that go into the site visit on Saturday see the access onto 9%. There's a note of that visit circulated to members on their desks in front of them. Also, the second particular plan, Mr. Chairman, is the layout, an illustrative layout of how you'll get 6 on that site. And then the access arrangements has already been agreed by the Highway Authority. One of the issues that cropped up last time, Mr. Chairman, was the business of the extant permission at the back of one single dwelling. As you can see, Mr. Chairman, that's been, the applicant is indicating that in fact he would forego that lieu of the permission for the 6 on the site. The maximum is 6 in any event because the Highway Authority has conditioned, or if planning permission is granted, seeks a condition that the maximum number of dwellings on this site is 6. If the extant permission was added, that would be 7. And the way of dealing with that, Mr. Chairman, as you can see from the report, is to look at conditions, and particularly on page 5G132, I've outlined a recommendation for a condition to look at that particular issue. But I understand, and speaker may well respond, Mr. Chairman, I understand that particular condition is acceptable to the
thank you, Mr. Chair. Just got to like to bear these things. Saving them, but explain them or something.
As you're no doubt aware, you'll get 3 minutes in which to address the board, so I'll let you know when your time starts. You've got a minute remaining, and then when your time's finished. But your 3 minutes starts.
Good evening, members, and thank you for this evening. I don't want to repeat too much what I discussed at last meeting, which I'm able to attend, and also the information that's been provided. From our perspective, we feel that we're bringing forward a proposal that is with one settlement and development boundary. We also feel as a small development, we can deliver these projects in a short space of time, which alongside larger strategic allocations, such as the one which borders our site, actually provides a great addition to the local housing requirements, and this is also supported in the NPPF. We understand the main reason for deferral from the last meeting was to enable site members to visit the site, mainly regarding the access. I hope the site visit was helpful and useful and enabled the members to visualise this alongside the plan to embrace the access. On this point, I'd just like to reiterate that we've worked closely with Highways in this matter and looked at the RSA as requested. And we're obviously now in a position whereby we have no objection on Highways. Another concern raised, as was just discussed, was the current planning approval for a single dwelling at the rear of 164. We're aware of why this was raised, but we have the same understanding that the condition would be for 6 dwellings, and we're more than happy to accept this condition. We also feel it's a far better piece of urban design to have the dwellings at the back of the site as suggested there. So we'd have no issues with this at all, and this is what we strive to create with any approval. Lastly, I'd just like to politely request that and reach a decision this evening. It's extremely helpful. Myself, I run a small business and it's a small developer. So this mission is extremely important to our businesses as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, do you have any questions? Thank you very much indeed. Members, who'd like to speak first? Ridley?
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank the board for the site visit. I found it very enlightening. The space is obviously quite a large space, and it will easily accommodate 6 dwellings. So there was a discussion about being stamped at the back, how that would work. Big things could be put in place to ensure that 6 and then that seems that would be make it very difficult. The long street, the character of it is mainly a lot of terraced houses, but a little bit further up, there's Victorian, Edwardian, sizable properties. So I think this, if it's built synthetically with lots of space around it, it would retain the rurality that North Yorkshire Borough Council wanted to try and introduce to make sure that we don't side of the I find it enlightening. That would be the best.
Thank you. Anyone like to comment or if you close? Thank you very much. Seconded, Councillor Bell.
I'm happy to say, Chairman, but I just want to make sure that 7th house be built. Ask whether the conditions are strong enough.
And I generally share your concern, Councillor Bell. I have absolutely no doubt that the applicant is being quite genuine with it. Has been expressed. But when I read the additional conditions and the I'm not a lawyer, but because in my understanding, it can be read in 2 ways because this consent as opposed to the concepts on the site. So I have no issue whatsoever. Just ask that we grant consent, but with that condition to be clarified and confirmed or varied. I mean, I think the intent is clear. It's just getting the technical wording right way, or if indeed there is another method of giving voice to that. So I think we just rather than delay the meeting, says perfectly happy with support the recommendation of consent, but with variation on the condition to be agreed.
At that point, I don't sound critical of Mr. Brown, but yeah, I can see now what you mean in terms of the possibility of interpretation. So I think that that could probably be easily amended by reference to the application site. But I think if you are minded to permit development in principle, subject to clarifying that, that can be done with perhaps very quick consultation, yourself as chair and Councillor Phillips. So I agree that that shouldn't be a only reason members not to proceed.
Thank you. So are you happy to take that?
Happy with that, if you, the final 4 words, words.
Words is good. So members have been proposed and seconded, consent is granted subject to clarification of that additional condition. See those in favour? Those against? That's unanimous, I think. So consent is granted. Members, we now move to the final application, number 540 and 550 metres in Falls Farm, Astley Lane, Astley. The Spicer has indicated that that's it, so the Spicer, if you take the speaker's chair, I guess you know what's coming, but if you take the chair while Mr. Brown introduces the report. Right.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't need to go through the plans, but at the moment, I've asked Sam to circulate the updated landscaping plan, which I've already circulated to you by email, but I did say hard copy available tonight, and I forgot to provide them at the beginning of the meeting, so Sam is passing those around. As you're aware, Mr. Chairman, the item was deferred last time, enable the Parish Council views to come before you. That, in fact, did happen. They are attached as one of the appendices to this particular report. Right at the end, penultimate pages. You can see there that they voted unanimously against the solar farm. They raised 2 issues right there, as you can see on that second page, about additional planting, the nature of that plant. The plan that you have in front of you is the result of that. Go to that in the report, and you can see bottom left is where the additional planting is now being proposed by the applicants in response to the Astley Parish Council's concerns. And I think that follows the concerns raised by the residents of Bowles Farm. Parish Council may be able to update on any conversation that the parish has done with the residents there. But from my point of view, this is a better application certainly than when permitted, and that additional planting is an enhancement where we were when the board last considered the proposal. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Nice, welcome back. Nice to see you. Mr. Brown will, sorry, Mr. Tobin will explain something you never before.
So you're extremely to address the board. So I'll let you know when your time starts, when you've got a minute remaining, and then when you're being to your time starts.
Thank you. Thank you, members. Astley Parish Council held a consultation with residents on the 25th of May, and as a result, they did vote unanimously against Solar End Farm. We do appreciate the amendments that have been made to the application, so thank you for that. But the following concerns do still stand. Concerns about the environmental impact to good farmland, impacts of disruption to local wildlife and birds, disruption to the biodiversity of the land now, disruption in terms of traffic during the setup phase, and concerns about noise from the solar farm afterwards. We urge you to consider the wellbeing of residents in the area that directly impact this. There are concerns about safety with additional traffic on the busy and dangerous stretch. Concerns have been raised about the impact on neighbouring of moving cattle and tractor work. Local farmers have argued that there are contradictions over what is offered in the planning application versus reality. For example, planting of wild meadows in an sheep would be allowed to graze less. The sheep won't know the difference and lead to anyway. Also concerns about how much screening trees will really provide, and what if it doesn't work. Are there any conditions to this? Some residents who will overlook this are still concerned about glare as well as noise. There is anger and disappointment from local residents that greenhouse and in particular is being such a large project, ruining a rural landscape, reducing land for growth. This should be a priority for all the UK, and additionally ruining the peace and quiet of a tiny rural community. Local farms planning application does not accurately detail information about the history of the farming land and what has been grown there. Finally, concerns have been raised about the long-term impact of solar farms on farming land, as in truth we cannot know yet, and also where will they turn. So Parish Council strongly feel that whilst renewable energy is very important, we must find a balance between its benefits and the preservation of our unique environment, but also consider the well-being of the communities impacted. We need to protect our green spaces and farmland. So ask you to take our concerns as you debate this application. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Other members, do you have any questions for us?
Mention of the history of the land going on there. Just elaborate a little bit.
I'm afraid I don't have any details. A resident actually present at our meeting on the 25th, who is a local farmer, did indicate that crops mentioned in the original planning application weren't accurate and that more crops had actually been grown on that land in the past. But I don't have the details of they are.
Any other questions, Brenda?
I was going to ask the same question.
Say it's very encouraging. Isn't asked the same question again.
Children, Chairman, children.
There are no other questions. Thank you very much indeed. Our next speaker is Mr. Ben Parkins, also here in person. So Parkins, you take this chair. Welcome back to the council. Mr. Tobin will explain the rules.
Just pointing out the last time you're here. You have 3 minutes in which to address the board, so I'll let you know when your time starts, when you've got the meeting, and then when your time starts.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good evening. I'm Ben Parkins, I'm consultant. Practice from Solar Farm Company. We will be happy to answer any. I shall be aware climate change is the Office of National Statistics and somewhat was very worried about climate change. Alongside this, energy security. There is a need for energy. Good news is that there are clean, efficient, and deliverable solutions out there. Solar is one of them. The solar farm lies before you, Lane, 9,000 homes for aiding farm viability, spiraling costs. It's even better news that solar farms can be back for a long time. This solar farm includes over a mile of substantial amount of 3.74 acres, all of which provide critical habitat, a wide range of local birds. Biodiversity net gain is impressive at about 200. However, we appreciate that balancing the need to tackle climate change against other concerns is not easy. Decision makers. We have heard and understood the concerns raised by you, Parish Council, and my team has responded with changes. These include the substation and away from property, as you mentioned. Price assessment and solar farm is unlikely to be. The planting of a substantial 2-foot wide tree bed, developing 3 sizes of the site, further screen the solar farm. Total, this would consist of 3.7 acres. About 4 million. It's also the planting of rows of trees, about 4 to 4.5 meters tall, have an immediate. There's also the removal of previously proposed 20 following extensive discussions with National Grid. The site proposal, 5% of it does not constitute less than most versatile agriculture. To conclude, solar farm will respond positively to climate change declaration, providing clean, secure energy, local needs, a long-term legacy of benefit of nature, today's younger generations. Therefore, respectfully, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much indeed. Do you have any questions? Mr. Godwin?
Thank you. It's about restoration plans afterwards, and I note that our conditions, this is something we raised earlier, were about the infrastructure on the land. I just wondered if you could clarify how much infrastructure is actually subsoil, how much is built into the soil, whether it's the foundations for the panels themselves or other things below the soil.
The panels themselves are set into the ground, so there'd be very little on the foundations. The only elements of foundations would be substation, the storage, the roof.
Yeah, everything else you can take out the ground, so all the cable would come.
Councillor Goodwin?
What trees have you got? What trees are there? So obviously that would be how quickly the screen goes up.
Yes, so in terms of trees, these will look chestnut, silver birch, wild cherry, oak, willow. The row of trees in front, those are the ones that would be extra heavy trees, so already about 4 meters distance.
Councillor, any other questions? I just have a couple. Condition 17, the construction environment management. I would imagine that deals with the general sort of considerate contractors. Are you happy to enter? Bearing in mind some of the things that the previous speaker said about inconvenient disturbance during. Okay. Are there any other comments? One nicer basically, which is highlighting no concerns about. Was there anything else to say in response to?
Yeah, there were many points raised. One of them about wildflowers and sheep grazing. So if sheep grazing does take place, it would be a managed grazing regime, which means that obviously they don't over graze the land, but it will just be key here to allow wildflowers to flourish. There was a comment about painting glare, but a specialist assessment has been carried out. Has concluded that that wouldn't be an issue. In terms of construction traffic, construction period is very short, it's about 4 so it would be a temporary impact, and thereafter the contractor would go on site every fortnight or so just to check up on some servicing. Sorry, there were many points on that list. Please feel free to remind me of this from the. Yeah, obviously my client has been very responsive at addressing the concerns raised. It doesn't form part of the plan application. He'll be very happy to engage with residents to the south of the site, include additional planting to them.
I personally, I think that would be very. What else can be done? Those things subject to the decision of the board. Very helpful. It's always very good to have that open to just see how we should come. Any other questions, man? Councillor Jarvis.
Thank you, Chair. One thing that does concern me, having seen other ones, is where you say you're going to put 4 metre trees in. some of the 4 metre trees that you put in are little more than whips, which take several years to even put a leaf on them. What is the density of them? How long will it take them to develop to actually efficiently screen it? So some of the trees that you buy 4 metres, but it's just one single stick with a leaf on the top.
That's a good question. So I've been liaising very closely with my landscape architects, particularly about area in front of us as well. You can't really see it on plan now, but they're proposing is 2 rows of total 30 trees. 2 rows will be staggered, and you have 4 staggered in front of the farm. In terms of how leafy they are, I ask my colleagues to make sure that the species chosen are leafy and you know are effective basically.
So I think you appreciate that some 4 metres, well, some opposite our house that was planted 10 years ago that are still going to stick with a leaf on the top.
Yeah, so yeah, it'll be a case of choosing the right trees that are good for screening there.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Jarvis has took a little bit of mine, but I know you put a tree thing, what trees you put in and everything, but it's too small for me to read it. So are there going to be native trees? Because you've just put standard trees.
Yes, so
we're a big favourite of native trees.
Yes,
we've got enough foreigners there.
So my landscape architect colleagues have come up with a list of species that would be good. So that's for hedgerows as well, and for the wood belt as well. So in terms of the trees, you're looking at field maple, forest chestnut, wildlife. Use that as the habitat.
Thank you, because there's been a study about the birds migrating and with solar panels, and they're still saying it's very low, but it would be nice if there's some food for that. And just answering the whips one, it depends on the condition of the soil, and a whip at that size could take anything up to 15 years to even get that size. Thank you.
And just one final thing from Archie Burlingham, and part of a friend's answer to my earlier question, post-operation plan, and to negotiate that condition so that we actually have a plan in good time for the end of operations on this.
So do you mean a decommissioning plan? Yes, of course, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Chair, I've got maybe a technical question, and I'm sure it'll be asked about other things in the future. I believe you said when we spoke that the use of like a modern panel, so the light comes through and then reverse reflects and comes back the other way, so you pick up light from both directions. That reflection, can you see that reflection? Talk about glint, and you're saying you've done a process about looking at shine. Get the impression it's going to be a silver foil.
It's just a clean sheet of glass. So it'll go through the glass, or it will come at an angle, as it does if sun shines on the grass now. That will come on the side of the panel.
Thank you. It's not as technical as I thought.
Pretty technical. So, members, any other questions? In which case, gentlemen, thank you very much. Mr. Brown, before we go into the debate, I'd just like to refer you to condition 4. And I agree that there was a question, at how these things are worded. I read question 4, or condition 4, as simply being if the solar farm ceases to operate in its 40-year period, as opposed to remediation at the end of it. Is there another remediation condition?
There's a further decommissioning.
And is that I was
Condition 5, which follows on. This condition 4, this is conditions 4.
Give the applicant's comment earlier on. Councillor Hickman.
Assuming you, I was going to launch off it.
Oh, I'm very close. Given that, I'd like to just look at condition 4 and 5 to see where it is, and I couldn't see other than the environmental. I'm concerned to what Vice was saying about considerate contractors. So I think if we could include those, that'd be great. And the applicant did indicate that.
Normally the activity as well, but we can separate them out, Mr. Chairman. That's not a problem.
If it does it, Mr. Brown, I'm happy.
Okay. Well, depending on what the considers, we can obviously liaise with the applicant about the wording of the conditions that you referred to.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hickman.
Thank you, Chair. Number of points. First of all, I think this application is considerably better now than it was when it first came to us. I think a lot of issues have been addressed. I have regrets over the loss of green. I have regrets over the loss of agricultural land. I have regrets over the visual impact. But, and this is one of the frustrations of being on the planning for donkey's years, you can't refuse something just because you don't like it or would rather it was somewhere else. The application is here, and I think the applicants have covered, and as the report says, balance of the argument now is in favour of a consent. And with regret, I will move with grant consent, subject to whatever conditions just agree with the planning.
Thank you, Councillor Hickman. Members, anyone else wish to proposal or second?
I'm quite happy to second it, but I am concerned about the radiation at the end of its lifetime, whether that be within 40 years or if it's extended after the 40 years. I think it needs to be quite clear that the land is returned, and I think that the subsoil land as well needs to be sure that the whole of the land is returned to greenbelt and agricultural usage when it's finished. Just based on 40 years, or not just based on however long it exists.
Just add to what Councillor Gosling is saying, and in good condition that it could be used.
Yeah, it needs to be returned to agriculture.
I'd like to add to that, but in a much more timely manner than door.
Well, please,
you know,
absolutely.
Councillor Humphries, that is exactly what is fueling my concern over remediation.
And mine.
So we all have previous scars, and they're still there. You know, I'm not for any stretch of the matter trying to doubt what the applicant has said on the. But things change with time, and you know but those members sitting here or elsewhere who granted consent for the thought they had it right. That's really why I raised the issue of mediation condition earlier application. It answers the applicant to give me reasonable assurance that actually we can work together to get that right. I think it is to get that. You know, Councillor Hayfield, I share your concern. I'm all the time about protection of the green and not, you know, not building on it or using it for anything it's intended. But I think this occasion, I'm with you. They does feel the country needs energy sources. I think the applicant has gone a long way with the community and with the to get the emphasis right. To begin with, you're right. Slightly, I was dead set again. Genuine. I've been persuaded. Councillor.
Thank you. I think you've really hit the nail on the head here. when taking planning permission, none of us were there. And what we've got to do as a planning committee to make sure protect want to happen with people not here now. Doubt very much whether anybody in this room will still be involved in this application or project 2 years' time. It's a different set of people.
If you're in the airship, I was seeing you somewhere in the Cotswolds. Sat there having a gin and tonic in the sunny evening, there's no panels in the way.
Exactly. So we have to make sure that we get the conditions to ensure that happens to the best of our ability.
I agree, but I think from the answers we're given, we've got to. Councillor Farrell.
Thank you, Chairman. I have to say, as climate change champion, authority, I agree with yourself, Chair, and also Councillor Hayfield. But for one, gentlemen, I just don't like the idea of losing our fields. The farmers would agree as well. And I agree with what the Chairman said. You've met an awful lot. I think like Councillor Gosling referred to about the soil, etc. And it is returning back to agricultural land, and that then it does please me to go that way. But I am still pushing for more solar panels going up and tall buildings or any buildings that could do that. I'm a great believer, like Councillor Hayfield. That's what land is for, farming. But this has got a time limited situation, so I'm together with that.
Any other comments? Gentlemen, I would genuinely because that will help to assure the application. But members, we proposed and seconded that consent is granted subject to the variations. Those in favour? Any against? Unanimous. We'd encourage you to burn up a bit more carbon and come and talk to us again about those. That I'm sure can be done.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. That's the end of tonight's meeting. Thank you all for your. Sadly, the chip shop is again closed.